Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of the Wealth Helpdesk. I'm CJ Collins, with me is Hunter Henry, and today we are just investing time back into you, trying to figure out how we can solve the finance mystery for the folks at home, Hunter. And
it's good to be here this morning. I'm excited. It's gonna be a fun topic.
yeah, exactly. We've got a couple different that we're gonna roll out to you, and let's just jump right into it, because the first thing I want to talk about, and there's a lot of folks with a lot of different opinions about housing and what housing looks like. But I want to talk about housing. And you were telling me before the show that you've invested some time into a rental property and some things. So we've got some experience on that side. Sarah and I bought a house last year, our first house. We used a VA home loan. But this environment we live within on the housing side, you know, the American dream is to own a house.
It is.
But I mean, I think there are so many different variables to this where it might not make sense for all people at all times to buy a house, right?
I don't think it does personally. I mean, look at where we're at right now. We're up in South End in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I don't think half the guys that work here even have a car. They have skateboards and bikes and everything else. And I mean, to buy a house in this area, what's the entry price over here for something nice?
Yeah, it would be
$1 million.
It would be a lot. Yeah,
it's a lot.
Yeah.
Versus where I live.
Sure.
In Albemarle, it's very inexpensive to get into a home out there. There's
Absolutely.
not a lot of rental properties available. There's not a lot of apartments or anything. So I think one depends on where do you live.
Yeah. And then I think the other piece of that is like owning a home has always been the American dream, right? And I think there's a lot of pieces that go into that, right? When you first get started, we need to come up with a down payment on a home.
Yeah.
You're going to have to deal with PMI, and maybe you have different other opportunities for loans you can take. I used the VA home loan, which made I had to put zero down. It helps.
Amazing.
Right? For a first-time homeowner. But there's all these pieces to the puzzle, and right now interest rates are, I would say they're high. You can actually throw up the chart over here, but ultimately they're not as high as they always were. They were higher at one point, but right now they've kind of settled around this, I would say 7%, maybe a little bit lower than that.
Now.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's, my first interest rate was during COVID.
Okay.
And I had like a 2.85 or a little, maybe 3. I mean, it was like very, very low. And, then we saw the COVID appreciation, which was just crazy. I bought a $265,000 home. I put 5% down, got a great rate. I had PMI, but I mean, at the end of the day, like my mortgage payment was less than what it would cost to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in the same area. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But that was a fluke.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if that'll ever happen again. And I unfortunately sold that home.
Yeah. Sure. And that's what I think one of the problems that exists in the housing market right now and things that's going on is the fact that folks still have those homes at that interest rate. Maybe it was a 30-year loan, and that was 5 years ago. So they're 5 years into it, and they're kind of stuck in that home because they're going to have to get out of it and then go to another. And the interest rates are just so high comparatively to that, right?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, my first home, like I said, was $265,000, and I believe I refinanced it at one point, but I had my mortgage payment down to like $1,400.
Love that.
It was amazing. I mean, I was a very nice 3-bedroom home. I had a bonus room on a 1/4 acre, fenced in yard in a nice neighborhood. And when I sold that home, I sold it for like, I don't know, $330,000, $340,000. So I thought I had a ton of appreciation. Well, I didn't realize it was just going to keep going up. And now that home's close to $500,000.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people got put in that situation where now they're sitting on just a pile of equity, which is great, and it's a huge down payment on their next home. But then you have to combat the interest rate.
Yep. Yeah.
And the same home is now double almost.
Yeah. And I think the other variable on this is the changing stages of life.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe you find a new job, maybe you have a child, maybe you're a grandparent and your kids have children, you want to move closer to them. And there's all these variables of like, it's a time in your life when you might want to move. And I think this is something where a lot of people feel trapped in their current environment because they don't want to leave something that's such a good deal for them.
Oh, yeah. Well, and like I went and shopped around in Albemarle, and funny enough, some of these, like the new home builders, True Homes is one of them. I went and looked at a couple of their homes right there on the lake, and they're very nice homes.
Yeah.
They're, it's a huge home builder. They're one of the biggest. But they were offering, 30-year mortgages. They were offering, it was like 3% for the first year, 3.25 or 3.5 for the next year after that. And then like years 3 to 30 were at like 5.99.
Okay.
So it was really cool because with 5% down on one of these homes, you could, with closing costs, be around like, it was just a hair under 20,000, maybe like $18,000, $16,000, somewhere in there.
Sure.
And that's a pretty good deal
Yeah.
to get yourself into a home.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's easy to save that money, but I mean, that's a crazy good opportunity to hop into something at a pretty low cost.
Well, and the other end of this is to say, hey, what if I took that money I was going to invest into a home and I put it in the stock market?
Yeah.
You know, what returns am I going to get, and where's the value on the backside of that? Because you're still going to be paying rent, but it's not necessarily going to be going towards your personal bank account. And there's goodness to that, right?
Oh, yeah.
We've talked about some of those pieces, but ultimately when you're a renter, there's certain things you don't have to be concerned with, right?
yeah.
The maintenance on the home is not a big a deal to you.
You know, I don't think people factor that in.
Sure.
At least first-time home buyers, because I certainly didn't. Like, I didn't know how much it cost to go buy a lawnmower.
Sure.
I didn't know how much
or
it
the
cost.
time to mow it every
Or the
week.
time, yeah, exactly. Like, you know, when you're young and you want to go travel, like I'm going to Germany here in October, going for the last 2 days of Oktoberfest.
Cool.
And that's, 2 weeks I'll be gone.
Yeah.
To where I have to have somebody come over and, water the plants in the house and make sure the lawn is mowed and just, check on things. And it's things that most people don't really think about when they're getting into that first time home. All the little miscellaneous expenses that come up, the air filters, just all the little things.
Yeah.
And you have to think about those.
The pipes bursting, the water spills that happen, the inevitable toilet leak.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many little things that can happen.
And I think what matters about this is like just knowing who you are and what you want to do.
Yeah.
Because there are some folks that have decided that renting is the way they want to live their life, right? All the money they get, they're going to take, they're going to invest it into a stock market. They're going to do the Roth IRA thing, a regular Roth IRA, 401ks. They're going to use that. They're going to build up their wealth on that side, and they're going to rent their whole life. And ultimately, that's okay because it can work on that. On that side. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can also still buy a home. You just have to be able to crunch the numbers a little bit differently, right?
Well, I mean, like for me, I'm on my 4th home now, which is crazy to think at 30 years old, almost 31. But my last home I bought was a townhome.
Okay, yeah.
It suited my lifestyle better.
Yeah, sure.
Like it was made for me, because I travel. I'm all over the place all the time.
Sure.
I don't want to mow the yard. I just don't. I have to now in my new place. But my last townhome, I got to go all over the place, and part of my HOA due, they took care of it.
Yep.
They took care of the whole exterior of the home.
Sure.
So for me at that point in my life, it made sense. Now, if I was married and had kids, I'd want a single family home.
Sure. And the dogs in the backyard,
Exactly,
you might want a fence, those kind of pieces.
But there are options to get into outside of, a traditional single family home that might be more suited for a first time home buyer.
Totally. Yeah. And I think the other piece to this puzzle is the fact that wages matter, right? So when you're a 20-year-old and you come out of college, you're not going to make a lot of money, right? And so you might not have money in the budget to be able to afford a home. You might not have money saved to be able to put that down payment on. But I think if it's something that you want to do, you just have to know that that's your goal that you're working towards, and maybe give yourself a 10-year time horizon, a 5-year time horizon to say, hey, I'm going to save up this lump sum. I'm going to try and get to this salary point so I can afford this house payment. Now, the thing that's hard about that is the house payments with the interest rates are higher.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're going to have to call it the FIRE movement, right? You're going to have to sacrifice other pieces in your life to be able to say, hey, this is something I want and desire.
Well, not even just the interest rates, but the housing prices. I mean, listen, my first home was amazing. I loved that house at $265,000.
Sure.
I do not love that house at $500,000. To me, it's not worth that anymore.
Sure.
And that's a huge consideration for a lot of people because housing prices are skyrocketing. Now they're kind of mellowing out a little bit now. They're slowing down.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that they're going to, drop back to where they were.
Yeah.
We've kind of hit a new plateau, I think.
Yeah.
They might come down a little bit, but I don't think we'll see what they were.
Yeah. And obviously the COVID bump gave all, I mean, if you were a part of that era, congratulations, that's a win for you. Yeah. And we might see something like that again in the future, but it's probably rare.
It's very rare. Be very rare.
Exactly.
That was kind of a perfect storm is what we saw. And it was great for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people got to jump in on that. Really, really, it was amazing. That was another '08, essentially.
Yeah, sure.
That was what people got to see as a once-in-a-lifetime event.
Yep. And now we'll see. But ultimately, just remember, like, there's so many different variables to this. So do your homework, figure out what you want to do. And housing can be a great investment. Houses do appreciate over time, right? They tend to go up in value. So if you buy a house today and you have it for 30 years, you likely will be able to sell it for more than you bought it, as long as you take care of that home. But know that that's a lifestyle. That's something that you're going to have to want to do. And if that's not something you want to do, then consider other options.
Yeah. So what about like, a new home versus a older home? Like, there's a lot of these new construction builders like we were talking about earlier that are pretty aggressive in trying to get people into these homes with the first time buyer programs and that kind of stuff.
We're doing this in our family right now because my son was born about a year ago, last year. And so the family has all started to move this way. So Sarah's parents, my wife, they're in Rochester, New York, and they've kind of looked at both, right? They've looked at some older homes and looked at some newer homes, right? The thing with the older homes is there's going to be renovations that you want to do specifically, right? You don't like the carpet. You want this to be tile. You need a new roof. You need a new air conditioning unit. And so you have to kind of set some money aside to say, hey, I'm going to spend $100,000 fixing this piece of the house up, right? Where the new builds, that stuff is kind of already done, right? You don't have to worry about those pieces. You
move on in.
Move on in. It's kind of as is. And depending on what kind of new home you get, it can be a little bit more minimalistic, where it's a little bit cheaper, or it can be a little bit nicer, where there's some crown molding and there's some hand craftsmanship on that side. And I think that's one of those pieces where it's like, it's up to the beholder. Now, I have found, especially with the modern retiree, they don't want to do the work on rebuilding the home. And I can respect that. Like, they worked their whole life at that point.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, they are walking into that saying, hey, I don't want these projects. But if you're a project person, maybe you like that stuff. Maybe it does make sense to go for the renovation home and buy that older one.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of my thought as I break that one down. But interesting times in the housing market. Hoping interest rates go down, as we all are, so that we can take advantage of other things.
They're going to have to at some point.
Sure.
A little bit more.
Absolutely. Well, let's go to the next thing. We've got alternative assets. So where can I put my money in a spot that isn't necessarily something that we talk about every single day? Maybe it's a commodity. Maybe it's gold. Maybe it's a car. Maybe it's a bottle of whiskey that's worth $1 billion. I don't know. But there's a lot of different places to be able to put dollars in something that's a little bit more unorthodox.
Yeah.
Is there any that you like, Hunter?
I'm in crypto. It's been a wild ride. I mean, it's been absolutely insane. I started investing in it when I was in college.
Sure.
And that was just, it's been fun to watch. It's not something that I'm counting on to, make me a millionaire one day or break me, but it's something that I like. I invested in it. I think with any of these things, you have to understand it. You have to be passionate about it. So like, my brother, love him to death, but Pokemon cards, that's his thing. He loves them. And he actually has a substantial collection now. Sure. And, I'm a little annoyed with that because I'm sure some of those are my collection from when I was a kid and I don't even want to know how much they're worth now. But, he's passionate about it. He understands the market. Yeah. And, whether that's, you're a car guy and you're buying a classic car as an investment, or you're a, what do you call it, into wine, and you got, sommelier, and you got all of these fancy bottles of wine that are appreciating. There's a little bit of everything now. Yeah. And I think what you said is so keen in that, like, find the thing you're passionate about. Yeah. Like, I don't know if you share the same love for cars that your dad does. I do. Okay, cool. So like the car scene is awesome, right? Luxury cars, the Porsches, the Ferraris. If you have the dollars to be able to invest in that as an asset, let it appreciate and resell it. Those are great opportunities for some of these. They are, but the cars is specifically one that I'm very passionate about. And I tell people all the time, one of my best friends, he's always asking what car he can buy where he's not going to lose money on. I'm like, dude, like, that's not a thing. Sure. Like there are a few, but no one ever knows. Yeah. No one ever knows which one's going to be the one that just kind of holds its value really well. Porsche's, the 911 specifically have done, you could buy one and you're not going to lose a lot of money. Now there are some special ones that have just doubled in value, but you can't just go get into that. There's so many better options. Yeah. For that. If you're buying cars as an investment, just don't. Buy them because you like it, because you want to drive it. You know, buy it as a passion thing. You just want to own it. And if it goes up in value, great.
Sure.
If it loses money, you don't care because you know what, you had fun.
Yeah.
That's how I view cars.
Well, and like I said, that the reason for the passion on the car side is because it is nice to take the top down on a Saturday and go drive the car around.
Listen, that's, you know, my girlfriend will never understand this, but for me, that is the most peaceful thing that I can do, is just get in the car on a Saturday morning and just go drive. Where are you going? I don't know.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Wherever.
wherever I feel, find myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's some other interesting ones on here. Watches is one that I have seen a lot of folks that are really, really passionate about it, you know?
That's becoming more and more common. You know, you have the people that are doing the car flipping and stuff now, which we were just talking about.
Yep.
Watch flipping is getting huge. I have a lot of friends who do it. They're going out and they're buying watches and they're reselling them. And you could do really well doing that.
Sure.
But again, you have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because watches are not cheap. There is an influx of fake watches coming onto the market out of China.
Yeah.
And to the unkeen eye, it'd be really easy to buy one of these fake watches because they're very, very close.
Yeah.
And not all watches appreciate.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, I have multiple in my collection that will never appreciate. They lost money the moment I bought them. I bought it because I wanted it. Yeah. It's a watch that I wanted to own. I knew I was going to lose money. No big deal.
Sure.
But, you know, there are a lot of people that are doing that now.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other one for me that I'm actually really, I find intriguing in this group of kind of assets is art, because I'm not an art guy.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of folks that do love fine art and furniture.
Yeah.
Right. And because it's nice to have nice furniture in a home, and those tend to do really, really, really well.
See, I don't know anything about it. If you asked me about art, I would tell you it's probably the world's greatest money laundering scheme because I don't understand it.
Sure. Yeah.
I just don't. What was it? The banana peel that was taped to the piece of paper sold for like $50,000. For the life of me, I couldn't understand that.
Sure. I think that's also like when I look at it the same way that like older generations look at maybe a crypto or maybe a baseball card or maybe a Pokemon card or something like that, where it's like, it's just not their thing. And I actually really respect the idea that like certain people have just kind of found their thing. Yeah. And it's kind of like you said with your watches, like there's just certain watches that you wanted and you paid more for them because you wanted them and you knew they were going to go down in value. And that's the same way other people might look at art or furniture,
clothes or anything.
Exactly.
Just find something you're passionate about and you know, learn about it. Invest in it. Like if that's what you want to do, by all means, do it.
Sure.
I mean, you know, there's people that are. Remember the original iPhone back in 07?
Yep. Sure.
And I saw they were selling on eBay unopened boxes for $25,000-$30,000.
That's crazy.
It's insane what people will spend their money on. And it's like I think back to, you know, my grandparents, and they could have never envisioned a life where you could make money the way you can now, and you can invest in trading cards or Beanie Babies or, you know, some random toy that McDonald's gave out in 2003 with a Happy Meal.
Sure.
No one could have imagined that.
Yeah. And I think from an investment perspective, these are super unorthodox, right?
Extremely.
And one of the things that's also a really big caution on the back of this, they're kind of a liquid. Yeah. Like you might not find the right person in a quick time to be able to sell the asset. And so you should know going into it of, hey, what is your plan, your time horizon? And this can't really be your main investment. I think that's a mistake because you can be passionate about these things. They can be really cool, but know that they're hard to move at times.
You know, and it's like, I guess I look at these alternative assets like they're great investment opportunities.
Sure.
Again, you have to be a lot more passionate about them. You have to understand them to do it. Whereas your 401k at work, I mean, most places have somebody that'll say, hey, this is what you should do in this 401.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, get your company match, move on. Versus these, you really have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, like the people that were trading the futures on oils and stuff over the last weekend with all this stuff going on in Iran.
Sure.
That's not something you should hop into if you don't know about it.
Yep.
If you're not passionate about it, like avoid it.
Did you hear about the T-Rex?
No.
So somebody bought, and I don't know what the number is, so the internet, go ahead and go find it and put it in the comments.
The dinosaur T-Rex or the truck?
Oh, sorry, the dinosaur T-Rex. Okay. Yeah. So like, the big thing on the museum side is finding different commodities like this. Could be Pokemon cards or whatever, but there's only like 17 T-Rexes in the world.
No kidding.
That are like, and none of them are complete. They all have different missing bones and blah, 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 blah from the ground. But they're very valuable because you can put them in a museum and they kind of become the central piece of it. Yeah. And so one of them was sold for, it was several $1 million,
No kidding.
Yeah, tens of millions of dollars. That's like, and that's a big collectible that's going to go in like a museum. And that's like the whole thing around buying this specific commodity is turning it into a ticket. And obviously that's like major scale, but there might be things like this that have kind of come up. I think of, who's that pawn shop guy? You know what I'm talking about? The dude in Vegas?
The guy in Vegas, yeah.
Yeah. Who, like
Rick, or was it Rick?
Yeah.
What was the son's name? I know who you're talking about.
But they always have like cool stuff like the Lord of the Rings sword or whatever.
Random,
like Aragorn used this sword and like, somebody wants that in their man cave and it's worth a lot of money because of that. And those are kind of like really cool, interesting collectibles that it might be worth investing into some of those. If you looked at the things that are going on today, like you found something from, I don't know, Project Hail Mary, know.
Well, and I think all these things we're talking about, like if you're passionate, do it. But it should never be like your plan to retire on. You know?
Totally.
Like, we've got a Wayne Gretzky jersey that's signed and it's hanging up in the office, and I love that jersey. I don't know what it's worth.
Sure.
Never gonna check. We didn't get it for that reason. I got it because it's like, we love it. It's awesome. I'm a huge hockey fan.
Sure.
And it's like that's why it's hanging up in the office.
Yep. And that's why part of the reason that these are so illiquid is because you don't know who that's going to be valuable and when it's going to be valuable. Exactly. And you don't even know really in some ways if you want to sell that thing, right? And so this is these are definitely luxury products. One of the things on the first slide, you can go back to it real quick, Tanner, but I'd never heard of this before today, but there is the Knight Frank Investment Index. And this is specifically, these are investments in luxury items like this. So they take these luxury products, they put them in there. And so you can invest into that fund and it's done better than the S&P on certain years. Over the 20-year period, it's actually done about 40% better than the S&P.
No kidding.
Which is wild, right?
Wow.
I would not have thought that.
No, me neither.
And I think it has a mix of things. I'm certain there's some gold in here. I'm certain there's some rare metals and whatnot that exist. But something a little bit more fun, a little bit more unorthodox.
So speaking of rare metals, do you invest in gold or silver or anything?
We have a bunch of silver and gold coins.
Really?
Yeah, physical coins that we'll sell from time to time, depending on how the market does. So
cool.
But that's something that actually it was a. My grandma and grandpa kind of handed them down through the family.
Oh, really?
And that was part of.
We've got some.
Yeah.
I don't keep much, to be honest with you. I have a little bit, but mostly it's just family stuff.
Honestly, for me, it's like it takes space in the safe. I'm worried if somebody's going to steal it. You know, if that would be like the one thing that people would go for if they kind of got in. So like, I don't love the stuff under the mattress, and that's why I go more digital. I have a bunch of crypto. We do Solana, we do Ravencoin, we do Ethereum.
I hopped on all the little fun meme coins.
Exactly.
I did all the. The stuff with Robinhood back with AMC and GameStop and all that stuff was for fun. I mean, there's been some crazy. The last 5 years, has been just completely different than what everyone's used to.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think the other piece to this that we haven't really touched on is I know you're a little bit of a gamer. I'm a gamer too, but there's like skins in game sales. The Counter-Strike. If you're a Counter-Strike enthusiast and you play Counter-Strike. The cases and the sale of the skins and really the digital assets inside of different games. Roblox is a great example of this where you can have a wardrobe of stuff. Those things are sellable, and it's crazy some of those markets, how well some of those have done.
I remember Seth was doing the whole Counter-Strike thing, and I didn't know anything about that. Like, that is so beyond my knowledge. I didn't know you could spend, what's one of those knives worth $1 million or $400,000 one sold for or something? It was some crazy number.
There's a scale, just like a watch. You have different scale and ratings and stuff like that. But what you're going to see in this next generation, if you're older and you're watching this, the kids
like, what's Counter-Strike? I've never even heard of this.
Exactly. Well, so you have if I have a Fortnite account and I've bought 30 or 40 different Fortnite skins. Yeah. It can be really interesting to see at some point those skins are going to be worth certain dollars. That account is going to be worth bundled as a whole. If I can sell you the whole account with all the skins inside of it, it might go up in value because you have some pretty dope skins. Because
we just never know. Edition. This stuff happens overnight, and it's like social media has exacerbated this a millionfold.
Totally. Yep.
Because, somebody posts about it and then it goes viral and then everybody has to have it. And that's kind of what creates these things. But it's like, I mean, you could have never convinced me, but this would be the way it is.
Well, and there's a good example of one that failed on its face, which is Crypto Bros. What was it called? Crypto Punks?
Oh, yeah. The NFTs.
The NFTs. Yeah.
So
the
like, NFTs.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you have like an NFT and this was like a digital picture of something.
It was a non-fungible token.
That's right. Yep. and we saw that like those were going for millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden they were worthless.
Yeah.
Which is wild, right?
Well, I think that was almost similar to like the meme coin stuff that all these like influencers were doing.
Yep.
And they got pumped up and pumped up and pumped up, and then it just fell out from under them.
Exactly.
And I think was it Jake Paul or Logan Paul who bought like a bunch? He bought millions in these NFTs, and they're worth virtually nothing now.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing I think you have to be very, very cognizant of when you start to invest in something. Maybe you're passionate about it. Maybe it's a Dungeons & Dragons thing or a car or a piece of furniture or whatever. Just know walking into it that it's one of those things where the value of it can change so drastically and you can get your money so tied up. So you really want to be an expert before you walk into any of those pieces.
For me, like, I'm such a car guy. We talked about this, but like, my next one, I want to buy an older 911.
Okay, cool.
I want to buy like a 1970s Targa, something that I can just enjoy and go drive on a weekend. And I'm not going to baby it. I'm going to drive it. I'm going to drive it as much as I possibly can and load the miles up on it. So for me, that's not an investment at all because, again, I'm going to load the miles on it, and that's hurting that investment, if that makes sense. It's going to lower the value the more miles I put on it. But I look at that as some of these cars, they were, a tenth of what they're worth now when they came out. They've just quadrupled, tripled, quintupled in value. And I don't expect this car that I'm looking at to go do that. But I also look at it as, dang, if I don't buy it now, what if it does? And then I don't ever get the opportunity to own it, because just like my first home, I loved that home at $268,000. I do not love it at $500,000.
Yeah.
So I view the cars the same way. Like what I might like at this price, I wouldn't like at that price.
Sure, exactly.
So I think, and all these things are like that, whether it's a Pokemon card or piece of gold or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, if you're excited about something, go ahead and put it in the comments in the chat right there. So you let us know what alternative asset you get excited about, and has it worked out for you? Has it been really good or has it been really bad? Because ultimately it's hit or miss on that side. But if you are passionate about it, I think you should pursue your passion, have fun with it, enjoy life on that piece. But we thought this would be a fun little topic to talk about.
I love this topic.
Yeah, this is a good one. Let's go to the next one, which is digital asset securities. This is an interesting one because of the way the world is moving, and we can talk a lot about some of these pieces on the AI side for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because as we use AI more, we're going to give access to different things, and obviously, our society doesn't use cash as much as it used to, and so
I don't even know where my wallet is today.
Exactly. You said you bought gas today.
It's all on my phone.
Exactly. Yep. All those pieces. And I think this is really, really important as we look at how do we keep up security, because all of these things can be lost so quickly. Your Fidelity account, your Charles Schwab, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, people lose their million-plus follower social media accounts all the time because they don't have the security set up. And I could argue that's just as much of an asset as anything else in this world.
Exactly.
People are making a lot of money off that stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good example. And I think this is also a pretty normal fear that we see from a lot of folks that have seen the world change in this way.
Well, and we're seeing it every day. Like, 5 years ago, I could have told you, like, hey, that's a scam. Don't even answer it. Don't open that email.
Sure.
They're getting really good.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these are like the DMV one. You got to pay this toll.
Yep.
Or your license is getting suspended. Yep. And, I get that one all the time, and it's always from Georgia because I have a Georgia area code number. I don't live in Georgia anymore. But if I did, it's pretty believable. Like, that's a believable text message. And they're always after your stuff, trying to get in.
Yeah. And it's really, really important to be diligent in these ways. The world has just changed so quickly. I worry about somebody like my grandma, who's just like, you just, because like, it's just, I can kind of fish them out. And I think you kind of know what things to look for and what things not to click on. But I think because the world has changed so quickly, so fast on that side, it's really going to be harder to detect.
Well, it's like the AI photos and videos now. Like, you get a couple up there, you're like, That's really good.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's going to really start to play into these scams and things like that. And over the next few years, it scares me.
Sure.
Because like they're getting to the point where I almost can't tell sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wow, that's scary.
Yeah, and then I don't know. Do you use password storage? You know.
Yeah, I mean, the iPhone's got like, in my opinion, the best one ever. I love it. And now these new passkey things. I don't know what they are, but I know I love them. They work really well. I don't have to get a text message anymore because of the passkey, and I don't have to answer the code or whatever. Type in this number, this letter. The little "you're not a robot" thing.
Yep. Yeah, I do.
And I get like those things are great and they've help a lot of people, but they're sometimes tough to use.
They are, yeah. And I think we also are coming from an age where like my family still has a lot of like the notepad next to the computer that has 87 different passwords on it, right? You've seen that one before.
Oh yeah.
And as they change, they kind of scratch them off and put the new one on there.
Well, and it's funny, like the iPhone now, like, and I'm sure Android's the same way, but like it tells you like, hey, you have 682 compromised passwords from this data leak. And I mean, that's pretty cool that it can tell you like, hey, like this password was found in a data leak. Like it just knows.
Yeah.
So it's making it easier for everyone.
It is.
I think everybody should be using those features.
Yeah, and this has been obviously a big focus when we look at as the world is changing and as the bank changes, and I think there are some still concerns because for me, I use a lot of similar passwords, right?
I do too.
And I think a lot of folks do, right? And so trying to get away from stuff like that, because if they get one password, they get all the passwords kind of thing.
Well, like, I called Fidelity a few weeks ago. I think it was Fidelity, but with a client, and it was able to authenticate her by her voice. It literally she had to just keep talking, and then it just authenticated her, no passwords, nothing, just using her voice.
Wow.
It's crazy. And then, you look at things like the digital coins, like the cryptos, and you have these people that are using like cold storage. Those little USB sticks.
Yep.
You can put it all in there and it's completely offline, which is probably the safest place for it, until you forget your password and you end up like one of these guys with $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. You don't know the password.
Well, and what's crazy about that too is it's not just one password. It's normally 20
like 12,
different words that you have to remember in a very specific order. And it's like, if you lose that piece of paper or wherever that thing is to figure out what those 20 words are, you are not going to figure that out.
Well, and not only are you not going to figure it out, but you only get a certain amount of attempts on most of them before it just completely erases everything.
Exactly.
And you lose it forever. And there's no amount of encryption or like you can't get into that.
Yeah.
You can't just call tech support and they unlock it for you.
Exactly. And so I think what this has changed is specifically as we look at your kind of wealth journey and your finances and all these pieces, this is an area where you're going to have to spend a little bit more time thinking about how are you going to attack this specific problem as we look at what digital assets look like and how they change. I mean, we were just talking about all kinds of pieces.
Well, I mean, you have to have your backups. You have to be your due diligence here is absolutely so important. It is so important to know your passwords to these things, have the two-factor authentication set up where you can. Like you don't want your stuff to get logged into and taken. No. It's that is one of the scariest things I could possibly think of.
Yeah, and then there's everything we're doing nowadays, I look at as so when we were in high school, Excel comes out, right? You get personalized Excel document that's just for you, right? You can save that document. I can send it to you. You can resave on top of it. And then the world kind of changed in a big way, 2013, 2014, 2015, where we can now collaborate on stuff. Yeah. So you can be in the same folder as I can be in, and we can work on a project together. It kind of doubles our output, and we're not having to save over each other. It's kind of helpful on that side. Because we struggle with this tremendously in the Army. Where like I'd send a document out, 10 different people would save it 10 different ways and come back to me, and then you have to like make the edits on your file, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which was no good. Yeah. And so that kind of changed that in a big way. But it's also going to exist, same thing where your Google storage area has some vulnerabilities on it, because who can you give edit access to those pieces, and what pieces of those information are kind of vulnerable to stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many ways right now, and there's new ways popping up every day for someone to get your information, for them to try to scam you, whether it's a text message or it's a phone call or they send you an email with a virus link or,
Yep.
you know, I remember back in the day, like, you remember LimeWire?
I do. Yeah.
I destroyed my family's computer with LimeWire. Like, that thing will never work again. I mean, just because we wanted to download some songs, you know, I think about, you know, when people were trying to pirate movies and all those things,
Sure.
like the Pirate Bay and all these websites. And you had to be very careful what you downloaded because you would, you know, absolutely wreak havoc on your computer.
Yeah.
And I think that's still just as much, probably more of a problem now, to be honest with
Totally.
you.
Yeah.
People, they have found ways to absolutely wreak havoc through email and text and everything else. You just gotta be very careful what you click on.
Yeah, and I think part of this is the marketing campaigns that are the sales stuff that comes to you is also going to be a new issue that comes up with AI as bots are able to kind of figure out.
Is it Claude Is that the new one that everybody's using right now? It was like OpenClaw or something. And I think it changed to Claude.
Yep.
Yeah. And there was a whole craze. Do you remember that on TikTok a few weeks ago? Everybody was going out and rushing to buy a Mac Mini, which you did not need to buy to run this program, by the way. But everybody was going and spending $700 to give it access to their whole life.
Sure. Yeah.
That's very scary. That's an open-end project.
Yeah. When you set it up, I was talking to one of our colleagues yesterday, Mark Plover. He's the man. Mark, we love you. But he was talking about somebody who had an AI agent that they had trained on a Mac Mini that was sensing that the person using them was unhappy in their current job. So the Claude bot created a resume and then started to apply for jobs, got an interview at a company via the process that it was going through.
Yeah.
And so the guy had to call and be like, hey, sorry, I'm not really looking for a job right now. My AI agent went and actually applied for this job. I'm not interested in the position. Thank you so much for your time. And like, that's a snapshot on something that can happen when you give access to AI to your digital life. And I think maybe that's like low on the scary scale, but like when you start to add access to bank accounts and other things like that, and it starts to make purchases based off of what you think.
I think, you know, that in itself scares me to death because I think we're still in the very beginning stages of this AI.
Yep.
I mean, you've got like Tesla's got that new Optimus robot that's coming out.
Yep.
And people don't realize like that is, I mean, I watched all the movies. Like I watched Terminator. I watched iRobot. Like I'm not saying that's going to happen.
Sure.
But like we are introducing this AI into our lives and it's a lot more capable than we thought it would be.
Sure.
Or at least than I thought it would be. I'm sure the guys that were creating it, they knew what could happen.
Yeah.
But now we're getting to a point where not only can it access your personal life, can it be I use it every day. I asked it this morning if I matched before I left. Like literally, it's awesome. I love it. But like I think about it and like the job market from AI, it's going to change it entirely.
Totally. Yeah.
It's crazy.
And I think the question I would ask you is like, what do you think the balance is between understanding and fear for anybody in their life? Because I don't think they can avoid it.
No,
right?
Gosh, no. But, you know, I think it's exactly what we talked about earlier when we were talking about the alternative investments. Be passionate about it. If you're not, maybe don't use it to the level that some other people are. Like you're going to see some article or some TikTok or YouTube video talking about how I got AI to do this for me. It's going in and it's, you know, I've got it trained to buy stocks. I've got it, you know, on DraftKings, it's making all my sports bets for me. Like whatever you figured out or whatever you saw this video to do, like if you don't know much about that topic or you aren't passionate about it, maybe don't dive headfirst into it without first learning a little bit. Yeah. And I think that, you know, the same can be said for this, you know, the digital asset security that we're talking about now. Like make sure you do your due diligence.
Yeah. And I think if anything, any AI you use, you could be Claude, you could be ChatGPT, you could be Gemini Bro, whatever you are. Yeah. You can ask it, say, hey, how can I protect myself against some of these security concerns that exist within this realm? And guess what? It's going to give you realistic answers. It's going to try and help you solve that problem. And then it's going to understand that that's something that you want to do. And I think that's good.
It is.
Right?
No, it's one of the coolest things I have ever used. And I use it every day now. It is making my life easier. But I'm using my due diligence. Yeah. You know, like I don't have ChatGPT going through and answering emails for me yet.
Yeah, sure.
Can't wait for it to do that.
Yep.
But I still like to do that myself. Now, will I have it proofread something for me and make some grammatical changes to my emails or my text? 100%.
Yeah.
but you still have to be aware.
Yeah. And I think you could use it in the same way. So if you took an email you think could potentially be a phishing email or somebody trying to get stuff, you screenshotted it, you sent the link to ChatGPT, it might be able to help you say, hey, this is something that is not something you don't want to click on. And I think that's impactful because it can help you do some of the things you're talking about from making your life easier. Go ahead.
I was just gonna jump in, because we're talking about the security stuff, and I was thinking about this the other day. We were making, Sora is one of those AI video apps.
Sure.
And you can, make videos of people, and they look really realistic.
They do.
And it would, we're at a point now, like you're talking about, grandma getting a text message, and I could see my grandpa falling or something like that. You get a video from you, hey, grandpa needs some money or this or that. And we're at a point right now where it already looks real. It's getting close to tricking us. It's only going to get worse.
Yeah, sure.
So you have to make sure you understand these things.
Yeah. And I think the ability to I know Hunter and I know you and what you're going to say and what you're not going to say. Because you wouldn't call me and be like, hey, CJ, can I borrow this money? Yeah, there's just certain things
exactly.
There's just unorthodox things that happen. You're like, oh, this doesn't seem right. Yeah. And so I think you have to pull on that thread where your discernment becomes really, really important in that environment where everything could potentially be fake, right?
So where do you store your stuff? You've got your passwords, your photos, your contacts. How do you keep track of that if you lose a phone?
Yeah, I definitely am an Apple person. And I also think what you're pulling on here, this thread is really, really important too. Cause it's the phone, if I lost my phone, bad things happen from a password perspective. I am having to reset every password, try and figure out what everything is. I'm going to be on the phone for a week trying to figure out all those pieces, right?
Well, I ask you that because obviously I think what happened to me this weekend.
Yeah, sure.
It's 80 degrees, the weather's amazing, and we wanted to go out in the lake. So we went out in the boat, and I was wearing, not swim trunks yet because I wasn't getting in that water, way too cold. But I had running shorts on. They had the shallow pockets, and I put my phone in the pocket, and I went to get off the boat, and we were stopping at this place called the Boathouse to get a drink. And as soon as I got off the boat, it just decided to fall out of my pocket right into the water. And I watched it in slow motion, just ploop, ploop, gone. And, I was like, well, that stinks. And honestly, I think the biggest slap in the face was, the phones are waterproof now. It's only maybe 15 feet deep. They're 10 feet deep. And when we got back on the boat to leave, it connected to the Bluetooth and started playing music.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, so as we drove away, it just staticky and just went away. And I was like, man, that was a slap in the face. But, I went home that night, no phone. I had my iPad, thankfully.
Yep.
But I quickly realized, well, okay, I can't call an Android phone with this thing.
Yeah, sure.
I can text message and I can FaceTime. Check my email still.
Yep.
But just little things, I went to go log into I think it was Facebook or something. And it was we're going to send a notification to your YouTube app on your iPhone 17. I'm I can't do that.
Yep.
Try another way. And thankfully, I had already preemptively set up other avenues for me to log into these apps. So, I didn't just use two-factor authentication because in this scenario, I couldn't get a text message to my phone number. Even though I had an iPad with iMessage, those texts are not coming from an iMessage device. So you have to think about that. If you only have two-factor authentication where it comes straight to your cell phone number or it calls you.
Yeah.
If you lose your phone, you can't do those things.
Yep.
So you have to have a backup. So for me, it was I had the backup passwords for Facebook. Had them written down in my notes. Well, because I have the iCloud thing on my iPhone, all my notes were synced. So I could just go on there, click it, type it in, and we were good to go. We were rocking and rolling,
Yeah, and that's one of those things where it's kind of easy to make sure that something like that is set up so that you can go do it. But you actually have to take the time to say, hey, if this scenario happens, how can I do that? Yeah. And I don't think a lot of folks spend the time doing that. And it's kind of a new new area of your life that you just need to invest a little bit time and resources to.
But it makes it so much better.
Oh, totally.
It makes it so much better. I mean, literally, I got my new phone yesterday. They overnighted it. I got it literally in a day, filed the claim on Monday, got it on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Great. It took an hour for my phone to re-download everything.
Sure.
But 90% of my stuff was already logged in.
Yeah.
It was really nice. It was really nice.
Have you ever been an Android person?
I've tried. I used to have one.
Does Android do the same thing? I haven't used an Android in years. I don't know.
So I actually had an Android for the weekend, trying it, and I, knock on, it's a nice phone. Mark loves them. He got mad at me because I didn't necessarily love it, but I don't understand it.
Sure.
Like it was so much. It was a foldable phone, which was really cool for watching videos.
Yep.
But like, I couldn't set up anything.
It's different.
Because it's just, once you're locked into an ecosystem, it's really tough to make that change.
Exactly.
But I think they're still great phones. I had a Google Pixel for a little bit, and I really enjoyed that phone, actually enough. So,
there you go.
yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's go to our last segment here. We're just going to do a little bit of Q&A from the chat. You want to go first, Hunter, or you want me to go first?
You go ahead.
We can answer them again. Okay, give me number 2 then.
Yeah, so if I were to buy a primary residence right now.
No, don't do it. I'm just kidding.
Can I still treat it as an investment? Or am I better off continuing to rent and put that money in stocks?
If I buy a primary residence right now, can I treat it as an investment? I think it is an investment. I don't think it's an investment today. Mm-hmm. Obviously, so I'm in this scenario, right? Last year we bought a house. I got a 30-year mortgage. I'm going to pay $2,800 for the next 30 years, and I will own my $450,000 house.
Yeah.
That's something. That's an asset, right? I'm going to get it. I'm obviously going to spend some money over that 30 years investing into the house. I'm going to pay taxes every year. I'm going to pay the lawn mowing fee every, week. I'm going to have to get a new refrigerator at some point, a new, washer and dryer or whatever. Yeah. But those dollars that I would be spending in rent are going towards equity where I can sell that house one day, right? Now, the flip side of this is if I took that money every year and instead of putting it into the house, I said, hey, I'm going to take $2,800 a month and put it into the stock market, would I end up ahead? Probably.
Well,
maybe.
But, to play devil's advocate here, if, we're talking about renting or buying, you're going to be spending that money on either rent or on the mortgage.
Exactly.
So if you're renting, do you still have $2,800 to go throw into the market?
That's also true. Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah.
So it's, and I'm not saying that, everyone needs to go buy a home. It's the best investment ever.
Yep.
Because there is nothing more disheartening than looking at that statement and seeing that $2,800 payment come out, but then looking at your mortgage, like, oh, $382 went to the principal.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
$2,400 was for your escrow account, and it was for your PMI if you have that. It was for interest. It was for all these other things. And, a lot of people don't understand that when buying that first home, especially like, oh, I'm going to make it an investment. You have to think about these things. You have to be, for me, like, I pay a little extra every month. Straight to the principal. And it's crazy. They have most of these, like Chase, they have a calculator on the website, and you can go in there. And if I pay $10 extra a month, what does it do? It takes off like a year. Like, it takes a big chunk. You do $100 a month, it's like 4 or 5 years. It's like a lot that it takes off.
Exactly. Yep.
So you have to think about those things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what matters for the individual, right? What kind of life do you want to live, and what things do you want to be able to say that you've done? And I would say overall, I think the house investment is a good investment and a good place to place your dollars, right? But it is a little bit of liquid. Right, you're gonna have to move in order to get some money out of it. There are pieces of the puzzle. You're gonna have to take care of the house. Yeah. And so I think that's a little bit different for everyone. We have a buddy. His name's Dylan. He's been on the show a couple times. He is like, he will rent for the rest of his life. He owned a house.
He's so anti-house.
He's so anti-house. And you might be that person. You might be anti-house, right? There is something very special about owning your home and being able to
do. It's your castle.
Exactly. You can do whatever you want. You can turn a room into a man cave. You could break a wall down. You can add onto your deck. You could build a pool in the backyard. Yeah. There's something really fun and special about those pieces. And I think there's an emotional piece to that I think is really, really valuable. Yeah. Because when you call something your own, you can make it what you want it to be, and it can have its own character.
No, I mean, and there totally is. But, for like Dylan, for say, like, he is kind of like me. Well, not really. He travels way more than I do. I want to travel as much as he does.
Sure.
Like, he gets to go all over the place.
Yep.
So does it really make sense for him to have a home? Do they even have a dog?
They have 2.
They have 2.
They have 2 dogs. Wow. Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, it's one of those things, like, when you don't have kids, don't have animals, like, the homes are great. Like, if you're like me and you like cars, I like having a garage. Like, having a garage I can work on. I got all my tools and stuff. So for me, like, it brings me happiness. It brings me peace. So for me, it's worth the investment because it brings me those things that I truly need in my life.
Yep.
But for someone like Dylan, I think, travel might be more important to him than, having a garage to work on your car in.
And there's something special about not being tied down too. You know?
Yeah. You can just move whenever.
Yeah. And you have motorhome life. You have, there's tiny homes that people build on trailers and
I've
they
got
live out of
multiple friends
those.
doing that.
Yeah.
I think too, like that's a great point you just brought up. Being able to just move.
Sure.
Like, young people are not doing what the last generation did.
Yeah.
Gen X and the boomers and everybody else. They got a job. They worked there for 40 years, retired with a pension, had a great life.
Yep.
Bought a home for $22,000. It's worth $2.2 million now. But, it's our generation's not like that.
Yeah.
We hop around, we move, we switch jobs. We're not stationary. We have this. A lot of us want that instant gratification. When they see something they want, they just go do it.
Yeah.
And, it's during COVID, we were absolutely in a seller's market. It was so easy to sell a home. Like if you owned a home, like everybody wanted to buy one at that point. The interest rates were so low. You were bidding wars over homes. So if you were a seller, you were doing great.
Yep.
If you were a buyer, it sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not fun. The bidding wars and you'd see a home pop up on Zillow and it was sold before you could even go to the open house. So they already had 100 offers. And I think about now, it's not like that. Like, I mean, when I sold my townhome, I got lucky. I sold it to a friend who was renting it actually. But even that took a while.
Sure.
Like we went back and forth for a while. And, I look at a bunch of my neighbors' homes when I sold that place. They were for sale for, 90 days or more. Some of them are still for sale. Something to think about.
Yeah.
You can't just pack up and leave. The apartments, you can pay them, 2 months of rent and be out of there, break your lease.
Yeah. And I think this is also one of those areas where if you're dating and you're trying to figure out what your future life looks like with your future wife or husband and you want to talk about kids and stuff, I think this is a good question to ask somebody to figure out what they want to do and what their life kind of looks like from a dating perspective, because everyone has a little bit different of opinion. And I think the knowledge on the background is important, where I do think this is a good financial investment. I just think it comes with some trade-offs, so you have to be ready and prepared for.
You just have to, like I said, everything that we have talked about today, you have to understand it and you need to be passionate about it.
Yeah, sure.
Like you need to be passionate before you go make these decisions, because you can get yourself in a pretty bad spot. There's a lot of people who bought too much home. That's kind of how it happened.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
They bought a home they thought they could afford and, they get, downsized, outsized, whatever. They, lose a job and you have to be prepared for those things.
Yep. And I think you actually said something about this in the beginning. And another important piece, and I don't think we've talked about from the housing side, is you don't want to get too much of a house payment that covers over 50% of your monthly take home.
Yeah.
I think the general rule that you should fall within is somewhere between 33 to 37 is a good number.
Yeah.
If you got to 40, I'd be like, that's fine, but you're going to have to, there's some 3% to 5% cut. You're going to have to make there, right?
It's just so tough for so many people, especially our age.
Yeah.
Because the salaries just aren't there to support these, $400,000 or $500,000 homes. Like even where I live, the median salary out there, I think, is like $38,000, $40,000. It's not very high.
Yeah.
But the home prices are cheaper. They're significantly cheaper than, where we are right now. I mean, it's not even close. They're still very expensive. So for someone to be able to rent something and pay, what's the average right now? $2,000, somewhere in there. It's high.
Yeah, it's high
for a 2-bedroom, and somehow be expected to invest in their 401, invest in this, have a car, pay the insurance, pay the student loans, pay all these things, and then still save money for a down payment. It's very bleak outlook.
It is. Yep.
And
absolutely.
I can see how some people get so just upset about that and just in the dumps.
Yeah.
But there are ways to do it.
Totally.
And I think it's going to be getting easier and easier.
Yep. Well, sticking on the home theme, I got a question for you, Hunter.
Hit me.
With mortgage rates still above 6% and home prices near all-time highs, is it actually a smart time for a first-time investor to buy a rental property, or should I sit on the sidelines and wait for a correction?
Jeez. I mean, that's a great question. So I have experience there because I rented my property.
Okay.
Now, I may have made a mistake because I rented it to a friend, which I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but be aware of the tension it can put on your friendship, first of all.
Sure.
Not paying rent on time or not changing the air filters in the house, or probably my biggest one, came over to have dinner with them and dumping oil from the skillet down the sink.
Yeah, sure.
Because they don't pay for that.
Yep.
But I'm going to get the call at 2 a.m. when the sink's backed up and I get the $4,000 plumber bill. There's just things like that you have to think about. So it's not just if I have a 6% rate, I can get a $2,000 a month mortgage and the home I can rent out for $3,000 a month and I'm going to be just fine. Like, do you have the reserve set aside for when something breaks? Because they want it fixed and they want it fixed now. When my renter, my friend called me, he said, "Hey, there's no hot water." Do you think he wanted that fixed that night?
I think so.
He did. And it was like 9 o'clock when he was calling me.
Yeah.
Turns out, again, I live in townhomes, and the way the water is set up on them, like my neighbor's water and my little water turn on thing are right next to each other in the front yard. And the neighbor's house got foreclosed on. And water company came out and shut it off. They turned mine off on accident, completely on accident.
Sure. Yep.
But, I'm up calling the people at, 10 o'clock at night and they're saying, "Oh, well, we're not in the office.
Sure.
Fix it tomorrow." Do you not just have the money for when things like that happen, when the water heater goes or something gets turned off on accident, like in my case, which is very rare, but it happens. Do you have the money for it? Do you have the time to take that call at 10 o'clock at night?
Yeah.
Do you want to deal with that? I think there's so many factors that go into renting a home. It's not just simply, if I can have a $1,800 mortgage, but I can rent it for $2,500, I'm making money. There's so many more things to it than just that.
Yeah. And I have a buddy that does this on the Airbnb side.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting dilemma too, because there's a different person every week and they might have different issues every week and things that they're using and whatever they're doing. And he's had a couple instances where they're like, "Hey, I'm not paying for this because of XYZ thing happened," right?
Exactly.
So that's the other variable. If it's not a long-term renter and you're going to go a path like that, just know there's a hospitality factor that comes into that piece.
There is, and also there is the danger of getting a not great person in there.
Totally. Let's party it up in your Airbnb for the weekend,
And you can put the rules up and say, "Hey, no parties, no animals, no this, no that." Some people do not care. And a great example, I went down to Sebring last weekend for the 12-hour race down there and I rented a car. Now I was going down to Florida and I went on Turo. Because I was looking at Enterprise. I'm like, good Lord, it's like $400 or $500 to rent a Sentra.
For you, those of you who don't know, Turo's, you can rent a car from
it's the
person.
Airbnb of car rental.
Exactly, yeah.
So I went on Turo and I found a 2019 Porsche Boxster.
Oh, cool.
Little convertible.
Yeah.
And I was like, that'd probably be fun. That'd be a fun car to drive. And it was maybe $100 more than renting a Nissan Sentra from Enterprise. So I go get that car. They delivered it to the airport for me. It was great. Literally, I landed, and it was just sitting at the airport. Key was in it, ready to go. It was so easy. So Turo is awesome.
Okay.
The problem was I got in the car, and, you have to take a million photos of the car so you protect yourself from, hey, you damaged this. No, I didn't. I have a photo. I didn't do it. This was when I got the car. So I got the car, and oh, my gosh, this thing was treated so poorly. It just made me so sad because it was such a nice car.
Yeah.
And people, because it's a rental, they just get it and they beat on it.
Yeah.
And, listen, it's a sports car. Drive it and have fun. But, little things were broken. The mirror, the window visor, somebody ripped the little cover off the mirror. It was just gone, missing. And just little things like that. The other mirror was completely torn off the hinge. And I'm just like, man, I would hate to own this car and know people were doing that to it.
Yeah, sure.
But that's a car.
Yeah.
That mirror was probably $100 fix. When you own a home and you rent it out and somebody pours grease down your sink and causes $1,000 worth of damage, or, they leave a window open and a huge rainstorm comes and, floods your, there's so many things you have to consider when hopping into those investments. One, the time, two, the money. So super important.
Yeah, and I think everyone looks at it from, hey, this is my paycheck, and it's not always just an easy paycheck. So
yeah, and social media, like we said, exacerbates everything. So it's so easy to see these guys I've got 19 cars on Turo, and I make $1 million a year. They pay for themselves. I get to drive a McLaren for free. Well, I could do that, and he could do it.
Yeah.
Or the guys with the homes. I own 250 Airbnb properties, and I'm making $10 million a year. Oh, good for you, dude. We only see the people who had massive success.
Yeah.
We don't see the failed attempts those same people had to get to where they are. And we don't see the millions of others or thousands of others who tried it, failed, and just gave up, and it cost them a lot of money.
Yeah, sure.
So you have to think about those things. It's not just an overnight success story for most everybody.
Good questions on the Wealth Help Desk.
Yeah, great questions.
It's been a fun episode. We've gotten to talk about a lot of these things. If there's something you want to hear us talk about, you got a question below that you want answered, feel free to throw that in the comments down below. And this has been another great episode. Thanks for joining me today, Hunter.
Yeah,
it's
this
been
is
amazing.
awesome. This has been fun.
It has.
Great topics.
But we'll see you. We'll be back every Wednesday, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And we're excited to see you next week. And thanks for joining us. Have a great day.